Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today. Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the issue that is certainly a major issue, and one considers the mass migration to the West and the tragic inability to create a situation of mass immigrant integration and the issues around the social trust and social harmony that go with that the failure of it, I suppose, would be the best way of describing it. All across the Western world, the globalist cabal has forced without the consent of the populace, forced mass migration onto the West, but forced that mass migration has primarily come from the surplus populations of the world, none of whom come from first world countries, and very few of whom have English language skills at even the minimal level. And along with it, they have the peasant lifestyle of the mud hut, and even those that would consider themselves at the apex of the third world countries, they are so consumed with entitlement and attitudes to graft and corruption that they're just as useless, really, as the peasants in the overall scheme of things. But what's concerning is that even 20 years after arriving, so we're talking about the early tranches of mass migrants to, say, Australia, but you could say the same thing to Britain or Canada, the United States, the entire English-speaking Anglosphere, that after 20 years in the West, very few of these people speak what would even be considered like third-year high school level English. And we'll pick the median here. We're not talking the most advanced and brightest students, but really the mid-range. And you're looking at something in the order of 10% speak proficient high school English. As many as 50% have almost no English at all. Over a third have zero English. And then there's a cohort of 20 to 30% that have English that you'd consider to be, advanced kindergarten, perhaps, that level. Why is this? Why, after 20 plus years, are these people able to draw government benefits, have access to all sorts of things without having any, language skills of note? Why are they not required to do it? Hey, buddy, if you want to have, white country Western welfare, then you have to make an effort to learn the language. And we're going to give you a rigorous test. And each year you have to show some sort of improvement. And if you don't, then we're going to invite you to leave. That should be the requirement. For English, it's a little bit different because English is the world's language and the world's business language. So the elites all over the world speak English. And I noticed this traveling around internationally on business. I did expect the elites to speak English, but initially I was looking at arranging interpreters and this sort of thing. Found I didn't really need them because all the elites, whether it's in a third world country or somewhere else, the elites speak English. It's different when you get down on the street, of course, with the peasants that never went to school or something, or even in Europe. If I go out to get away from the downtown areas and say somewhere like Germany, and I'm looking to go to the butcher and buy some German smoked meat, which I rather like, speck and that sort of stuff, and the butchers out in the burbs or something, they don't speak English, and so I had to use my rusty German to get by on that. But nonetheless, English is the world's language. So as I travel around the world doing on business, then I didn't really need to learn another language, although I did make that effort, by the way. So, but it's different if you have the amount of people that speak other languages. They're either very confined to a geographical area rather than international, or their numbers are very small. For example, certain Asian dialects, how many people speak Filipino, for example, outside of the Philippines? Well, not so many. Now, Japanese, how many people speak Japanese outside of Japan? None of the Japanese companies don't have sprawling sort of commercial empires. They do, but it's mandatory that those people that are like proconsuls of these business empires around that they speak English. So, even in Japan, I didn't need actually it would have helped in Japan, but I didn't need to speak English. There was a time when I got lost in one of the major train stations in Tokyo, and it was in peak hour, and it's so cheek to jowl there that you can't actually see the color coding on the floor, which would lead you to the platform. So they had this like it was this planter or something. And so I ended up jumping up on that and just screaming at the top of my voice, "Does anybody speak English?" And and this voice came out. "I speak English. I learn English at university." Well, you'll do. Where the fuck is the train platform? So anyway, language is very important to fitting in and being able to work with the people that are there at all levels, government services, commercial level, and so on. And this is something that's not happened. Now, when we were sold the mass migration lie, and it's a lie, the mass migration lie by a centre-right government, no less. And this happened more or less coordinated at the same time all around the world. So again, showing and demonstrating the globalist cabal pulling the strings behind the curtain, whether it be a left-leaning government or a right-leaning government, they all succumbed. So the right-leaning government in Australia said, look, the economy can't grow. We just can't grow the Australian economy because we're so short on skills. We just don't have the skills to grow it. A skills shortage. Now, this was, of course, an outrageous and grotesque untruth, a lie upon lie upon lie. And they said, well, we've got to open up the doors to mass migration for skills. It's only for skills. And we were assured that these people would be highly skilled. And this is how they sold it to us. Highly skilled, and we'll make sure they only speak proficient. Only people who speak proficient English will be allowed in, and they must be highly skilled by our standards. So this put the minds of a lot of people at rest. Now, if you look at how many people around the world speak good English and have first world level qualifications and experience and credentials, there's just not that many. So the migration rate would have been fairly low, maybe 40, 50,000 a year. And that's not a problem. Most, if they speak English and they're qualified to first world standard, they'll integrate pretty quickly. A lot of those will be from the white countries anyway. So people, okay, all right, then no one had a problem with it. But what happened was quite different. Instead, masses of third world peasants came in, Chinese and Indians and Filipinos and whatever, and they didn't speak a word of English, as in not one word. So they had no first world qualifications or credentials. So it was a complete and total lie. If indeed Australia was short on skills, then sure, okay, fine, bring in skilled people that speak the language. But if Australia wasn't short on skills, which it wasn't, by the way, and the only skill shortfall could have been easily made up by training local people. So they bring in people that don't speak a word of English and have no skills. So it obviously was a lie in both ways and both directions there. So these people came in. Now, a lot of them still don't speak English, the ones that came in the late 90s and early 2000s. Even kids, like people that were born locally from migrant parents, even they speak with quite a heavy and pronounced accent, which you see in the United States with the Hispanic communities. They, they form enclaves and ghettos and so on. The kids that were born in the United States still speak English with a heavily accented Latino accent. I mean, they were born in the States. They went through the whole school system. So, and even children, or even young adults or children, say, who are 15 or 16 or so when they arrive in Australia, they have very poor English years on. Now, in order to help with the integration or to assist integration or facilitate it, the government knew there was a problem here, so it's not as if they were completely oblivious. But how did they try and solve the problem? Did they say you have to learn English? You would be required to. No benefits, nothing. No healthcare, You must learn English. Well, you can go to free schools. Won't cost you a penny. You go to free schools to learn English, but you will learn it. And this is not a matter for discussion or debate. But instead of doing that, they went in the opposite direction. There's the kids that couldn't speak English were just waved through junior high school and senior high school. They were waved into college. I know what we'll do. We'll just give every one of them, whether they can speak a lick of English or not, we'll just give them all high school diplomas. We'll give them all university degrees, and then we'll give them affirmative action jobs in the public service. That'll fix it. That'll solve the problem. But it had the opposite effect. It just created a sense of entitlement. And in these third world countries where they have no concept of civic responsibilities and obligations to the civis and things like that, they just don't understand it. They can't even comprehend it, let alone discuss it or debate it. To them, as far as they're concerned, well, you must be weak and stupid and pathetic if you just give us all these things for free without requiring anything in return, so we can exploit you. You're nothing. You're not even shit. And so they have this mega entitlement, about they should get everything for free or for nothing without having to make any corresponding commitment. And again, this is whether you go into around England or Canada, Australia, US, it doesn't matter. You can go through entire suburbs where no one speaks a word of English or speaks it again to sort of junior kindergarten level. And just coming back to some of the stats, and I took some notes here, going back to some of the stats, the amount of people that speak, this includes, by the way, because they only elect their own brethren into local councils and local area governments and that sort of thing. Many of the government people that elect can't speak a lick of English. I mean, how can that be permitted, for goodness sake? So 25% of the mass migrants speak no English at all, and not even a word. Even ones that arrived as teenagers. Even 45 to 50% of the students that come to the West to ostensibly to study don't speak a word of English when they arrive and still barely speak any English when they finish. Yet the amount of them, nearly 100% get degrees and masters and PhDs, even though they can't speak any English. I mean, I'd like to know how that happens. So clearly they're being gifted on an affirmative action DEI basis. They're being gifted these degrees. But this doesn't cause integration. It just whets their appetite for entitlements and handouts and gimmies. Remember, they're third world people. They don't understand civic obligation. It's as foreign to them as somebody from Mars coming along and to Earth and looking around. They just have no idea what it is and how it is an important part of the wealth and social cohesion of the West. They just don't get it. 60%, like in racial enclaves, 60% to 70% have no English at all in the racial enclaves. 20-odd% have kindergarten English, and again, around 10%. So you're looking in terms of college level English or university level English, you're looking at around 1 or 2% of the mass migrants. Now, this interestingly corresponds with approximately with the rate of actual value, social economic value. So there's been sort of quietly buried studies done by the Australian government and other Western governments, where that of every 100 mass migrants that comes in the door, this, by the way, also includes, refugee intake, chain migration and family reunion migration, that sort of thing. But the amount of people that can actually have good English, competent English, and have recognised qualifications, expertise, and credentials that are needed within the economy, then they're somewhere around 3%. If you look at it generously, it's 5%. So for every 100 of these only, and again, I'll be generous here, 5 of them are able to actually integrate. And the higher skilled and more urban and credentialed they are, the more they'll disperse around the wider community. They won't go into racial enclaves. Some will, but most won't. And so when they don't go into racial enclaves, they've got it, they can readily access employment because they really do have skills and capabilities that are needed within the economy. But out of every 100, somewhere between 3 and 5 are the ones. So those people actually do integrate. So there's a very small proportion of the total do integrate, and integrate, from what I can tell, at least integrate quite successfully. But this is how it was when the what we wouldn't call it mass migration now, but when you look at the migration of the 50s, 60s, and 70s into Australia. Now, some of these were from almost refugee type, like during the Greek communist uprising. Quite a few Greeks were having their, who owned farms in the rural areas, they're having their farms socialised or attempt to socialise it in a sort of a communist socialist type regime. It didn't actually end up getting completed. A lot of these Greeks left and came to places like Australia, and because they were peasants and they were unqualified and were taken in more or less as refugees, many being illiterate in their own language, let alone English, then they're still struggling to uniformly integrate. Whereas, people that came from, say, Britain in the 1950s and 1960s, even ones that arrived, as teenagers or something like that arrived, they've integrated within their own lifetime, let alone children that are born here. So the integration is close to seamless with those sort of people, or even West European, a German guy, German kid that came with his family when he was like 5 years old or something. He's fully integrated. He just regards himself as Australian. Doesn't even think twice about, am I German or European? No, I'm Australian. So integration rates are very high. So if you look at mass migration and the bringing people in that don't speak English and telling lies to the local population, this is what particularly galls me. Why tell the lies? Hey, we're going to bring in a fuckload of people that are peasants from the third world. They can't speak shit English, and they've got no qualifications, and we're bringing them in as toilet cleaners. And so why not say it? Why try and dress it up? Oh, highly skilled people that speak perfect English. Why tell the lies? I mean, the intention to deceive is an outrage in itself. But coming back to the mass migration, I think, my view at least is, if these people haven't shown a clear effort to learn English, and to, again, free schools, don't change me. You say schools are free and they're all over the place. And if they're not bothering to learn English and pass rigorous English exams, then they should go. They've got to be invited to go back. You're not wanting to integrate. You're just wanting to parasite off a rich society. Go back to your peasant society and go there, or make the effort to integrate. You've been with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for listening.
So it's been confirmed